Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says that the Democratic Party actually made a giant mistake in attempting to appease Republicans during the Obama administration. Let's hear more of what he had to say.
Some Senate Republicans did meet with President Biden early on, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitt Romney. Could more have been done to get some of them on board?
No, we made a big mistake in 2009 and 10. Susan Collins was part of that mistake. We cut back on the stimulus dramatically, and we stayed in recession for 5 years. What was offered by the Republicans was so far away from what's needed, so far away from what Biden proposed, that he thought that they were not being serious and wanting to really negotiate.
Are you hopeful Republicans will join Democrats on anything, or Democrats will join Republicans on anything in the near future?
Well, I always say we want to work with Republicans where we can, but we have to get big, bold change done, and that is our #1 priority. I, have a hope. I'm always an optimist. You know that, Anderson. That now that Republicans have seen we can do it without them, that they'll realize they ought to try to work with us. But we're not going to make the mistake of 2008 and 9.
Everything he said there was accurate, and I can't find a single point that I can disagree with. I just really hope that he remains committed to that message. Because to be sure, and I'll give you the evidence, the Obama economic stimulus plan after the 2008 recession was kind of a disaster when it comes to increasing inequality in the country. Again, I'll give you the evidence for that in just a second. But he was also correct in noting that Democrats and Biden attempted to work with Republicans on this coronavirus relief bill. And remember, Biden wanted to pass a $1.9 trillion bill. And luckily, it passed in the Senate, it passed in the House, he's about to sign it. That's good news. What did Republicans offer as their counteroffer to that? Well, Collins is part of a small group of Republicans that met with the White House weeks ago to pitch a $618 billion COVID-19 aid bill. Biden opted to use a special budget process, reconciliation that can bypass the 60-vote threshold for his larger package. And that was the right way to go about it. Obviously, the relief deal is not perfect. We've been critical of it in some areas, but also we've applauded it in other areas. But John, do you think that this is a real awakening for the Democratic Party? Do you think they realize that they need to move away from austerity politics, but more importantly, stop trying to cave to Republican demands?
I think that on some level they have, but I wonder, like if Obama is at one end of the spectrum and our desires for what they would do if we were in charge is at the other, what does what he just said actually represent? Like, where are they at? It sounds like he's very close to us, but I wonder if that's actually the case. And you said we'll have to see if they stick to it. I would say we can evaluate the evidence that we have so far, and it's not necessarily yeehaw, he's on our side. And I would also say in terms of the desire for bipartisanship, the way that bipartisanship has generally been used when we talk about potential legislation, the way it typically is used is Democrats and Republicans teaming up to do something that might well be hated by both the Democratic and Republican bases. Like regular people might have no interest in it, but if you can get a couple of Democrats, a couple of Republicans, it counts as bipartisan. I would say the stimulus bill that was just passed is a much better bipartisan effort because it is something that both Democrats and Republicans want to be done. Their elected representatives just don't actually represent their base on that issue. And the duty of the president is not to appeal to Republican politicians. He's supposed to be the president for all Americans. And with this bill, he largely was because Republican voters like it, even if basically no elected Republicans do. The issue is though, if you're gonna come out and say, we learned our lessons, we're not gonna be bound to them, well then, why weren't the checks bigger? Why did you change the targeting threshold and the fall off at the last minute? Why did you cut the total amount going out in unemployment? When again, at this point, they're not even trying to get Republicans on board anymore. Why did you do all of these things if you realize that we need big, bold, blah, blah, blah? Why has Biden not done the student loan debt cancellation, even to the limited extent that he seems to think he's legally allowed to via executive orders? He's not doing that. And of course, there's a minimum wage. So they're doing better than I might have expected, but there's already tons of evidence that they're willing to not necessarily bow down to Republicans, But what our fear is that all of that is bowing down to a couple of Democrats, actually.
Yes.
But it produces the same effect.
Exactly. So the Kirsten Sinemas and the Joe Manchins in the Senate, the conservative Democrats who, at least when it comes to this specific debate, were just as good as Republicans in the Senate. And it's incredibly sad to see any type of kowtowing or any type of effort to appease them, when again, you're right. It's the most important point to make in this story. When it comes to bipartisanship, that means the electorate overwhelmingly in a bipartisan fashion supporting the legislation. And you're right, Republicans support it, Democrats support it. The upcoming stimulus package, again, which is about to be signed by Joe Biden, is incredibly popular because people need the relief. Bipartisanship isn't about Democrats and Republicans in the Senate singing Kumbaya. No one cares about that. Now, I promised you the aftermath of Obama's package. And remember, Obama was certainly committed to working with Republicans, and it was incredibly frustrating because Republicans only served to obstruct whatever agenda he had. And so Zachary Carter on Huffington Post wrote in detail about what happened following the 2008 economic recession and Obama's stimulus that followed. On the policies that mattered most for economic inequality, Obama consistently placed a greater value on public perceptions of bipartisanship cooperation than on actual results. For Obama, the political value of cutting a deal with then Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell was more important than raising taxes on many wealthy people, very wealthy people. Barely a year into his presidency, for instance, Obama began publicly championing austerity. Small businesses and families are tightening their belts, he said. The government should too. He created a bipartisan commission to slash the budget deficit and advocated cutting Social Security benefits that disproportionately help the poor. When the Bush tax cuts were set to expire at the start of 2013, Obama intervened to maintain the lower tax rates for people making $250,000 to $450,000 a year. And according to economist Emmanuel Says from Berkeley, the top 1% of American households received 52% of the economic gains during the Obama years, while everyone else only recovered 2/3 of what they lost in the Great Recession. So I am hoping that Democrats in Congress who were around for that learn their lesson, because that did hurt Obama. I think that it did lead to a working class disdain for the policies that he implemented, and I can't blame them for that. And there's no need why Democrats need to appeal to Republican lawmakers. If they're unwilling to work with Democrats, and they are unwilling to work with Democrats, then Democrats need to do what it takes to flex their muscle and understand their own power, understand the power of having the people behind these popular policies, and they just need to move forward full steam ahead. I understand that there are gonna be procedural issues as we experienced with the $15 an hour minimum wage. But I do think they could have fought a little more aggressively on that.
Yeah, I just want to really fast add a potential test. Rick Scott just tweeted, President Biden needs to start to take the national debt seriously. Okay,
come on.
They care about it now all of a sudden. And the other one was to give you an idea of how popular this legislation actually is. I mean, we've given you the polls and everything, but a senator tweeted this: independent restaurant operators have won $28.6 billion worth of targeted relief. This funding will ensure small businesses can survive the pandemic by helping to adapt their operations and keep their employees on the payroll. That senator was Roger Wicker, Republican, who voted against it. But he sure seems to want to talk about how awesome it is now that it's law, and he wants people to think that he was with it, I guess. I love it.
Not a single Republican voted for it in the Senate. Not a single Republican.
Where's Collins? Where's Collins?
Oh, and then Collins, you're right. I don't really care to hear from Collins, but we should be fair. We should give her an opportunity to respond to what Chuck Schumer had to say. Let's watch.
I thought that Leader Schumer's comments were bizarre. He voted for the same package that I did. President Obama urged me to vote for the stimulus bill that passed that year, and indeed called me afterwards to thank me for my vote. I was one of only 3 Republicans who joined the Democrats and gave President Obama this victory during the financial meltdown. So for Chuck Schumer, who was intimately involved in the negotiations as the assistant leader, to somehow criticize me for taking the same position that he did is simply bizarre.
She didn't debunk anything that Chuck Schumer said. Chuck Schumer said,
she described
we made a mistake. Yeah, she described what he said. And he was right. Yeah, you did vote for Obama's stimulus, which was not enough to help pull average Americans out of poverty. That was caused by banks committing fraud and then trading mortgage-backed securities that were toxic. Okay, like that's the point. Like the stimulus in the Obama era needed to be far more robust, and it wasn't, because Democrats made the mistake of trying to appease people like Collins, who still gets represented as a moderate Republican when in reality she's just like the rest of them. She's not really moderate at all. Let's keep it real.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.